Overallocated resources are work resources that are either working more hours than their assigned hours, like if they're full-time and they're working more than 8 hours, or if they're part-time and they're working more than 4 hours a day, or they're working during a non-working day or an exception day, or they're working during a time period in which they're really not available. In other words, we assign them to a task that they're on vacation. I mean, they're overallocated because, hey, they're on vacation, they can't come in to complete the task during that time period. Now, new to Project 2010 in the Gantt chart, any task with an assigned resource that is overallocated, it will display a red dude here over in the indicator column. You can see when I hover over that dude, it has a pop-up that says this task has resources assigned which are overallocated. You can go ahead and right-click for options. Let's see what those options are. Right-click, and you've got two. You can ignore the problem, which, hey, anytime I ignore a problem, it always goes away. So let's go ahead and say ignore. Hey, it went away. Well, no, just the red dude, not the overallocation. So let's go ahead and hit undo and right-click on it again. To see the other option that you can go ahead and fix in Task Inspector, select that. Now it gives us a little bit more information. Remember, it's the search internal documentation. 3.5 days is the duration. And the resources you can see over in the Gantt chart that are assigned to it are the Writer 1 and Admin Assistant 2. The more information that we got is that the resource that's overallocated is the Admin Assistant, because this resource was assigned during a non-working time. I mean, are they working during hours that they're not available, or are they working during a period, like a week or 2 weeks, that they're not available? In any case, we can do more research on that. But as far as the Task Inspector goes, you can go ahead and have the inspector figure this out and reschedule the task so that it can find a time for this task to be worked by the Admin Assistant 2, the next available time slot. So if we go ahead and click on Reschedule, hey, you don't see the red dude anymore because, well, before we go over in the Gantt chart, you can see that instead of being 3.5 days for the duration, it now takes 5 days for search internal documentation. And then over in the Gantt chart, you can see that we got a blue bar here and then a dot, dot, dot. Let's go ahead and scroll over to the end of it. You can see the end of the blue bar. That's what's known as a split task, and we'll go over that in a later training video. But what that did is it says, okay, the task will start here, but really we can't work on the task until the Admin Assistant 2 is available, so we'll split it and just say, okay, Admin Assistant 2 is available on, I believe, let me hover over the time scale, October the 15th. Well, it's hard to tell because, let's come up here and click on the View tab, go to the Zoom group. I believe it's looking at it every 3 or 4 days. So if I click on the drop-down arrow, there you go. As soon as I click on it, it says 4 days. It just updated. Oh, that's nice. Okay, let's go ahead and select days. That way I can look at it day by day. So there's Saturday, there's Sunday. And I can go ahead and scroll over here to the end. All right. So we've got Friday, day 1, Monday, day 2, Tuesday 3, Wednesday 4, and Thursday 5. So a total of 5 working days. Now, I know that when we go back here to the beginning when it starts, it's got, well, it looks like 1, 2, 3 days or so. In any case, it says it's going to start on the 8th, but the Admin Assistant's not available until later on, so it split it, saying, okay, we're actually going to do the work when the Admin Assistant's available, which will be for a total of 5 days. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and undo that, and let's undo it again, and then close out of the Task Inspector, and oh, there I go again. The Gantt chart totally gives me a blank. Maybe this is just my computer. But if that happens to you, then just go ahead and close out of the program and reopen it back up. And I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, there we go. You see, I was really fast. Okay, let's go ahead and scroll back over so we can see most of our Gantt chart here. And then we've got these others overallocated here, here, here. Now, looking in the Gantt chart, see if you can take a guess of why these resources assigned to these tasks were overallocated. The Admin Assistant 2s during a non-working time. I mean, I can get more information, as you just recalled, when you right-click on it and go to Fix in Task Inspector, and that brings up and says, okay, Writer 1 resource is overallocated due to work on another task. So it looks like resource Writer 1 is working on this task as well as another task at the same time. There we go. So this task, and then there's that task. Wait a second. Let me look at it just a bit closer. This task is at the same time as that task, but why is this task not starting after that task has been completed? Well, here goes the detective work. If you hover over this relationship, you can see that it's coming from task 9. It's not coming from task 10. So the relationship is not from task 10 here, but task 9. So it's coming from task 9, not from task 10. That's why this one's going to start as soon as this one has been completed. And also at the same time is going to be the next task that's going to start as soon as its predecessor has completed. So we've got two tasks here that have the same predecessor, and that's why when you see writer 1 assigned to this task and also to that task, you're going to have, well, 8 hours here on the first day and 8 hours there, so 16 hours. That writer's going to be pooped working 16-hour days. Well, they're over-allocated because they're only assigned to work 8 hours a day. So you can start thinking of what you're going to be doing. Either go ahead and remove the writer from one of the tasks, or reschedule the task, or assign somebody else in the writer's place so they're not working, or actually you can go ahead and assign them overtime, and we'll cover that in a later training video. So the purpose of this training video is to learn about overallocated resources and the other views that can help you determine the why of the resource being overallocated. So, well, here's one view, and the other views that we can go to, let's come over here and right click on the view bar, and let's go to the resource sheet. So anybody in red is overallocated, writer 1 and admin assistant 2. And then you get these yellow yield signs that when you hover over it, it says that the resource is overallocated. Okay, we know that. And it recommends that it should be leveled. Well, we'll learn about resource leveling in the next training video. That just means it's another, like we just saw in the task inspector, something that's going to be automated saying, okay, project's going to go ahead and either delay the task or split it to avoid conflict. And my recommendation when it comes to automation, that when you have project automated, you still have to go in and figure out what project did. So for all intents and purposes, I don't let project automate it for me, because once I do, I have to figure out what it did, and instead of doing that, why don't I just do it myself? So I know what happened, and I don't have to go ahead and figure it out if I had it automated for me. In any case, that's going to be up to you. Let's go ahead and move on. So in the resource sheet, you can see that these resources are overallocated, and as you recall, admin assistant 2, you can see it's got 0% here for the max. Well, when that happens, if you double click on the resource and you go to the General tab in the resource availability, you can see that they're available from the 15th through November the 30th. So that helps, and they're available 100% of the time, but if we go to change working time, what time is that? Is it 8 to noon and then 1 to 5? No, because when you select any one of these working times here, it's going to be from the default for them to work is 4-hour days, just 8 to noon. So keep that in mind when you can't figure out why they're overallocated if they're not working more than 8-hour days. This helps right here. Either we have them scheduled before the 15th of October or after November 30th, or we have them scheduled during that time, but we have them scheduled more than their default 4 hours a day. They're 4.5 or 6 hours, anything over 4 hours. Let's go ahead and click cancel. We can go to writer 1, double click. Okay, the resource availability, they're available anytime, so it's not applicable, and their working time, well, you can see is a full 8-hour days. Let's go ahead and click cancel, and their maximum units is at 100%. Okay, so it all ties in together and helping us to figure out why they're overallocated. Okay, that's one view. Another view is the resource graph. Let's come over here and right click on the view bar and come down here to resource graph. It's split into two windows. In the left window, you have the name of the resource, and then if they're in red, it means that they're overallocated. In the right window, well, you'll be able to see the graph once we get to it. You can see in the timeline, I'm in 2013 and my project's in 2010, so I can come down here on the right hand side and let's click back. There we go. We're in 2010 in just a single click. Okay, and we can go ahead and scroll over and hover over the red bars, and you can see that for this resource, let's see, writer 1 is overallocated for Monday and Tuesday. In other words, in the blue is their 8 hours at 100%. Anything over that, like 125%, would be, well, 8 hours is 100%, 25% would be 2 hours, so that'd be 10. But you can see that they're at 200%, so 8 plus 8 is 16. They're overallocated. There's 100% there, so in any case, let's go ahead and keep scrolling back and see if there's any. Oh, there's another overallocation for writer 1, and it's on Monday. Let's hover over up here, the September the 27th of 2010. You can keep scrolling back and forth for writer 1 to find out when they're overallocated. Now to go ahead and go to the next resource in the left window. Go ahead and click over. Now we're at Writer 2, and you can see that Writer 2, the title's not in red. Let's go to Editor 1, Editor 2, Artist 1, Account Rep. Well, remember, the only other one that was over-allocated was Admin Assistant 2, in which case, let's go ahead and scroll over because they're available from October the 15th on. You can see that black line here. Is that at the 15th? Let me click up here, hover over it. The 14th, the 15th. Okay, so the black box are available from the 15th, and we can scroll over to the end of November, the 30th. You can see that's when their availability, that's the window. So if you don't see any bars here, then, well, okay, at least for Admin Assistant 2, they're not supposed to be working during that time frame, so it's not going to show any. So that's not going to be helpful for those that are scheduled during a period in which they're not available. Okay, so that's another view to help you troubleshoot, or another way to look at over-allocated resources. Now there's the Team Planner view. Let's take a look at that and see if that's something that you'll find helpful for you when you're trying to figure out or have a way of looking at your over-allocated resources. Let's right-click on the view bar. There's the Team Planner. Go to that. I like this one. This one's pretty cool. You've got Writer 1, that's in red. Okay, they're over-allocated. And let's go ahead, and you can see that the tasks that they're assigned to here, search internal documentation, interview subject matter experts, you hover over it, gives you a pop-up, a little bit more information. And then let's go down to the bottom here so we can get that little scrolly here. Head and scroll over until we can see that you've got write content here, and also review with subject matter experts. And you can see that, well, 8 plus 8 is 16, they're over-allocated. They should only be working 8-hour days. So review with subject matter experts, maybe we should go ahead and unassign Writer 1 to that, maybe assign Writer 2 to that. Well, if we do that, they're working on write content as well. They'd be over-allocated. So these are the things that you want to figure out when you're looking at these views. And then you can go back to your Gantt chart or other views to help you go ahead and reassign or unassign those resources from one task to another to make sure that they're not over-allocated. And you can see over here, let's see, Monday and Tuesday, we've got 2 tasks that are crossing over. So this task right here, why is it starting a little bit earlier? Shouldn't it be a finish to start relationship? You've got proofread and add images. So when I hover over the task, it's got a duration of 2 days, but it doesn't tell me if it has any lead time. If I double click on it, let's see, 2 days, let's go to the predecessors, and there we go. That makes sense. Because the relationship is finished to start, this task is supposed to be starting when the predecessor is finished, but we've got a lead time of 50%. So when this task is about halfway completed, then go ahead and start the next one. And the problem with that is that having the same resource assigned to both tasks, well, then he's working on this one when this one is about halfway completed. Let me click off to start on that one as well. So there's, well, at least for, it looks like 2 days, he'll be working 16-hour days. Well, that is if we want to give him overtime. Okay, so there's the Team Planner. The last view, and my favorite view when it comes to working with resources, is the Resource Usage view. Let me come over here and right-click on the view bar, come down here and go to Resource Usage, and, well, we've been here before a couple of times in the previous training videos. And there we go, Writer 1 is over-allocated. Now if I go ahead and I come up here on the Resource tab, go to the Level group and click on Next Over-Allocation, it should take me to the next over-allocated resource here. Let me click on it again. It happens where it says, okay, I've already finished checking, and what I do is I go ahead and close out and reopen up my project, but it should take you right to the next over-allocation. If it doesn't, go ahead and select the task that the resource is assigned to, come up here and click on the task, and come over here to the editing group and say scroll to task. You see there in black. In other words, this is the task, and here's the summary. So 8 hours, there's the summary, is 8 hours. Let's go to the next one and click on Scroll to Task. We've got 8 hours for that task, which is the summary for that day. In other words, the totals. So if we had this task at 8 and that at 8, the summary or the total for that day would be 16. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. Scroll to, like I said, it's not working for me, but on the Resource tab, I should be able to click on Next Over Allocation, but it freezes up on me. It's a project issue that I've run into that, well, at least it doesn't work for me. Let's go back to the Task tab, click on Scroll to, and go to the next one, Scroll to. We're just looking for red. Scroll to and oh, there we go. But it's not for this task, it's for review with subject matter experts. Scroll to that task, you can see that we've got review with subject matter experts at 8 hours and also write content at 8 on the same day. So the summary of those two is 16. Okay, that's not going to work, okay? Do we have any others like add images, scroll to? Oh, looks like we've got something here, but not add images for Friday, but for the following Monday, because we also have to proofread. So there's 8 plus 4 is 12 in red because it's over 8 hours, and in any case, you get the idea. So if I go ahead and scroll down to Admin Assistant, and I select that one, and I say scroll to task, there you go. Wow, 4 hours. They can't even work 4. They're really wimpy. Well, as you recall, the Admin Assistant, when you double-click here, is only available between October the 15th and November the 30th. And when I click cancel and come up here and hover over the day here, well, that's before October the 15th, so that's a no-no. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video. As you recall in the previous training video, we learned to go to 5 different screens to find out which resources are overallocated. And each screen had its own different use for finding and getting the details about the overallocation. My favorite is the resource usage sheet here because it's the most detailed, I think, of the 5, wherein, of course, I can find out which resource is overallocated in the color red, but then over to the right I can get more details like how many hours they're being overworked, and if I want, I can actually change those hours, which I'll show you in just a minute. In any case, you can look at the example here for the 2 days that Writer 1's being overworked because he's working on 2 tasks at once for those 2 days, the add images and proofread. Now, at a very simplistic level, you can either go ahead and assign another resource to this task or that one to get Writer 1 off of it so he's not overworked, or you can go ahead and delay one of these tasks, push it out until he's available to go ahead and work on it, or you can use Project's Resource Leveling feature. Now, this feature is going to delay or split the task to avoid conflict for overallocated resources, and as a result, obviously, can delay your project's finish date. So let's go ahead and take a note of our project's finish date before we go ahead and use this feature by coming up here, clicking on the Project tab, going to Properties, click on Project Information. There we go. October the 25th, okay? Let's click Cancel. And then it's probably a good idea to go ahead and save a copy of project before you go ahead and level it. Even though you get the clear leveling feature, I mean, if you have the undo button available, that works, but if you click save, as you recall, the undo button's no longer available. So you do get the option to clear the leveling after you level it without using the undo feature, but keep in mind, if you level more than one resource, Project will only give you the option to clear the most recent level, okay? So that's why it's probably a good idea to save a copy of it. In any case, I'm not going to save a copy, but I recommend that you do, okay? So to go ahead and to level this resource so he can go ahead and work on all the tasks that he's being overworked on, then select the resource, come up here, click on the Resource tab, go to the Level group, and click on Level Resource. You can see that it's going by selected resources. We've got Writer 1. You can verify it by scrolling down. Writer 1 has been selected. Then go ahead and click Level Now, and okay, what happened? Ooh, I don't know. I guess we could go over here and right-click on the view bar and go to the Gantt chart and see if we can notice anything in the chart. I mean, that's one way. And the obvious thing that I can see is that this task wasn't split. We've got the first day here that I believe subject matter expert's going to be working on that first day, and then it's going to split and wait until Writer 1's available. Let me go ahead and click off so we can get rid of these pop-ups, because if you notice on the second task, Writer 1 can't work on that one and then the next one at the same time, so it splits it out until Writer 1 is available or finished with this task to go ahead and complete that one. Now, if you want to be sure that subject matter expert is going to be working the hours or the first day here, we can go back to the resource usage view, right-click, go to resource usage, go ahead and scroll down to, there we go, subject matter expert, who's been assigned to review with SME the task. Let's come up here, click on the Task tab, because we want to come over to the editing group and click on scroll to the task, so I don't have to scroll over, it just takes me right to it. And what day is he working his 8 hours on? His only 8 hours that he's been assigned to work on the task. Come up here, hover over M, well, September the 27th. So when he's done, he's out of there. And then the task gets pushed out, delayed until obviously Writer 1 is available according to the resource leveling here that's been done to the Writer 1 resource. So I can go ahead and right click, go back to the Gantt chart, and if I scroll down, there we go. The project's end date used to be October the 25th. It's been pushed out by 2 days. Let's see. That gets a bit tough to figure out what's been delayed, what's been pushed out. Well, split's kind of easy, but actually, if you want to go ahead and find out what project looked like before it was leveled and then what it looks like after, well, we can see what it looks like after, but be able to view it in the same view, then come over here and right click and change views and go to more views and go to the leveling Gantt. When you're talking about leveling and you want to find the before and after, go ahead and select that, double click on it, and if it doesn't pull up over here on the right hand side, the chart, then just come up here and right click on the time scale, go to zoom, select entire project, and it will, when you click OK, bring it all over. Okay. Now notice how you have two different color bars. If you hover over the brown, it tells you that, well, let me click off and then hover over it again, that this is the pre-leveled task. So all the browns are what the task was before project leveled the task, if there were any to level, and then what it was after. So you can see that the brown matches the blue means that nothing happened until we get down to this one right here. So the brown here is just, I think, just 1 day. If I can hover over it, I mean, it's so tiny. Let me click and then hover over again. There we go. So there was its original start and finish date the same day, 1 day duration. I mean, it says 2, but I think it's crossing over to this one right here because after it's been leveled, in the blue bar you can see it's a 2-day duration. So the subject matter expert's going to work here, and then Writer 1's going to go ahead and finish it off there. And then we can come down here and go, oh, look at this one right here. Before it was leveled, this task used to start on October the 11th and went to the 13th, 2 days. After it was leveled, now it got bumped out to October the 13th and then finishes on Friday the 15th. So if you notice, let me click off again. You've got that little line before the blue. If you can, let's see, hover over it, it gives you a pop-up that says delay. And actually, you don't have to come over here to see the delay. You can look over here in the entry table in the leveling delay column, and you can see, well, for here, it was leveled by 1.21 e-days, or elapsed days. So it delayed the task here, so we can get Writer 1 happy and not over-allocated. Okay? So Project figured it out, and we're trying to figure out how Project worked it, in which case, I'm more of the type of person that instead of having to do the resource leveling, Project work on it, and then me to figure out what Project's doing, it's just easier for me to go ahead and do it myself and to work with it as I go along and not go, you know what, I didn't like what Project did here to level that one, to split and push that one out. I need to bring that in, and let's just reassign the resource Writer 1 on this task to another task, and you see you get more flexibility if you don't use the resource leveling feature. But I've heard from some that actually resource leveling works great for them. So if it works great for you, by all means go ahead and use it. For me, on my projects, no, not so much. So I go ahead and I avoid the resource leveling feature. And then of course you can scroll down here and see that it finished 2 days later, from the 25th to the 27th. And then also over here you can still read that we've got another task that's over allocated. In fact, if you come over here to the same task, over in the Gantt chart, hover over the blue bar. Well, let me do it again. You can see at the bottom of that pop-up, it says potential scheduling problem. Right click to see options. I mean, you can right click there and fix in Task Inspector or ignore it like we did in the earlier training video, but over in the indicator column, right click on the red dude, fix or ignore. Okay. So if I want to go ahead and undo the leveling here because I don't like it, you can hit undo because it's still available, but if I go ahead and click save, I can't undo it. I'm toast. No, just go ahead and go to the resource tab here, go to the level group and click on clear leveling. Do you want to go ahead and clear the entire project or the selected task? Well, Writer 1 has been assigned to a couple of tasks here, so I'm just going to go ahead and select the entire project. and click OK, and then you can see we're back to where we started. There are no pre-leveled bars that are off from these other blue bars, what happens after it's been leveled, and when I undo it, you can actually see the changes that it goes back to or reverts back to by the blue or highlighted cells over in the entry table here. Okay, so these are the cells that it had to change in order to go back to the way project was before we leveled it out. And well, you can see over here that now writer 1 is over allocated on those tasks that he's working on at the same time as another task. A critical path is a series of tasks that determines the calculated finish date of the project, or you can put it this way, if any non-critical series of linked tasks slips its dates enough or gets delayed, this series of tasks will become the critical path. It'll get to a point that if we delay them any further, it's going to push out, well, let me go ahead and scroll down, the project's end date. So in other words, it's a series of tasks that must finish on time so project can finish on time. So can I delay any one of these tasks without bumping out the project's finish date? I can eyeball it and go, let's see, no, if I push that one, that push, well, hey, look at this. This one has quite the delay here, and as you recall, on task 9, we've got this start no earlier than September the 24th. So my guess is that from this task going on down to the end is going to be critical. But this task up above can be delayed, or any one of these tasks, because when you delay this one gets pushed out, that one gets pushed out, you know, if it's by days or weeks or months. Eventually, if it gets pushed out too far, where it goes past the 24th, the start no earlier than, then this whole thing is going to become critical. You want to see? Well, come up here, click on the Format tab, go to the Bar Styles group, and, well, there you go. You can see when I hover over it, it says right in the pop-up, a task is critical if it must be completed on schedule for the project to finish on schedule. Go ahead and check it, and there we go. All these tasks that are in red over in the Gantt chart are critical tasks. Together linked, form the critical path. So I can't delay any one of these tasks that are in red because it will push out the project's finish date. So if I come over here and I say 2 to 3 days, and I go ahead and hit enter, the new project's finish date is the 28th, and so hey, I ignored the critical here, but it's not going to prevent me adding an additional day to the task here. It's just to format those tasks that are going to affect the project's finish date. So let's go ahead and hit undo. And then when you look up here, you can see that none of these tasks are in red. Let me go ahead and scroll over just a bit. Because I can delay any one of these tasks, of course it'll bump out the next one because they're all linked and related. What's this task, the finish date? When I hover over it, it's the 16th, and again, this one down below is the 24th. So I could push one of these tasks, or a couple of them, out a couple of days, that's fine, but if I push them out like 20 days, it's really going to, well, it'll push this out past the 24th, in which case everything's going to become critical. You can give it a try. Let's go ahead and, instead of doing 2 days, do 20, hit enter, and oh my freak, everything's critical now because look at our, well, let me go ahead and right click and zoom in on the time scale and go to the entire project and click OK. Come down here. It's not what it used to be October the 27th. It's way past that. So let's go ahead and hit undo a couple of times and not have that get pushed out. Another way to look at the critical path is to come over here and right click on the view bar and go to the network diagram. I can only see part of it. You may have to scroll over here. I think the size here is at 100%. Here's where it starts, the project summary task. Then you've got the milestone, and then you have the research phase, which all the tasks in the research phase are non-critical. I can go ahead and bump out any one of those, and it won't push out the project state. Well, I can bump them out only so far. And then this one in the outline phase, let's go ahead and scroll over. When you get down to the level of the outline phase, you can see that create outlines okay. Review subject matter experts I can delay, but when I get to that one that can start no earlier than the 24th, modify outline, that becomes critical. So you can have in that phase a couple of tasks that aren't critical, but if you have at least one, over here in the network diagram, let me go ahead and scroll back, that phase is going to be colored in red. Okay, and then by the way, you can go ahead and right click in a blank area and zoom. Come on, zoom, 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 zoom. Entire project, click OK. It says it cannot display this below the minimum of 25%. That's fine. Click OK. You can go ahead and trace that a little bit easier from a distance and up close. And then you can go ahead and see different phases here or summary tasks. And at that level of the summary task what's in red and what's in blue for that level, for this one, that one, and then you can see all the way to the end where it finishes here, okay? As you recall in the previous training video, we learned about critical paths. There are a series of tasks that must finish on time so the project can finish on time. And it's marked in red each task that's critical, that if you delay one, it knocks the next one out, and that one's critical, so it's going to knock the next one out. It's like a domino effect until it pushes out the project's finish date, in which case we're no longer finishing on time. Now, these other tasks that are in blue, we've got some delay time. In other words, if I delay this task by 1 day or push it out by 2 or 3 days, well, that's a good question. How many days can I push these tasks out before they become critical? And it bumps those tasks that are critical, that bumps the next one, so it pushes out the project's finish date. Well, project has what's called slack time. It's the amount of time a task can slip before affecting other tasks and or the project's finish date. So to go ahead and take a look at that, the slack time, let's go ahead and change views and come over here and right click on the view bar and go to the Gantt chart, and then come up here on the Format tab, and there you go. Let's become slackers, and you can see in that pop-up it says slack, also known as float, or I call them floaties, shows how much a task can slip before it affects another task or the project's finish date. Once you go ahead and check that, notice that if we have any slack time, it'll display it over here next to, well, any task like the project summary task in that line that you can see when you hover over it. And you see in that pop-up it says free slack until September the 21st. Oh, that's good. So all these tasks, we can go ahead and push out till the 21st. After that, if we go to the 22nd, then it's going to become critical. And you can see we've got one down here for this task. It says it's got free slack until the 24th, after which it's going to become critical. I can try to figure this out in my head how many days that is, or better yet, let's go ahead and change views and go to the detailed Gantt view by coming over here and right-clicking on the view bar, going down to More Views, and select Detail, double-click on it. And then, of course, if you don't see the chart over here in the chart view, right-click on the time scale, go to Zoom, and say you want to see the entire project, click OK, it'll zoom right into it, and there you go. So it not only shows the slack time, but also the number of days that you have that you can be a slacker for, well, the research phase, 6.5 days. So I can knock this out 1 day, that 2, that maybe 1. I'm still under 6.5 days before it becomes critical. And then you can see we've got 6.5 days for this as well. Now notice that when I hover over this one, it says the slack is good until the 24th. And this one, when I hover over that one, is good until the 21st. Why is that? I mean, shouldn't it be good until the 24th? Well, you want to break your project down here just a bit, because notice that you're still taking into account that, again, when you hit the 21st, you still have a couple of additional tasks here. And how many days are these? Come up here, click on the View tab, and go to the Zoom group and change it. Well, it said days, but actually when I click on it, it now updates and it shows me 4 days. But if I go to days, there you go. And see if this makes sense. Look in the duration box. You've got 2 days for this one, and then 1 day for that one. So if you add it up, this one finishes on Tuesday before it becomes critical, because we've got 1, 2, 3 days, and that's what we've got here. 2 plus 1 is 3. So you take into account that after these tasks, or that phase finishes on the 21st, you add 3 days, it hits the 24th, which when you hover over that, it says free slack until the 24th. And then it knocks all the other ones out, and we don't finish on time. So this free slack is taking into account these other 2 tasks here. The research phase as a whole, any of its subtasks goes past the 21st, it's going to knock these out, and it'll become critical, that will become critical, and then it's just one critical mess, and we don't finish our project on time. And then let me go ahead and right-click on the time scale, go to Zoom, the entire project, click OK, and you'll notice that none of the critical paths to verify this has any slack. No slackers when it comes to finishing on time for any task that's on the critical path. Let's go ahead and go from the detail Gantt. You can see it right there. Right click and go to the Gantt chart. If you want to shorten the project's finish date, you want to move it up so it's not finishing on, well, let's go ahead and scroll down, October the 27th. Then a couple of things we can do is we can go ahead and assign additional resources if it's effort-driven. As you recall in the effort-driven training video, when you assign one extra resource, it cuts the time in half. So instead of 9.5 days, we can go to about 4 or 5 days, and then another resource go down to 2, and so on. So the more working hours or man hours, the less time it will take to complete the task. You can do that, or go ahead and delete a task. I mean, that obviously would work. Or you can remove any slack time. As you can see, you've got slack time here, and that's because we've got a constraint on this task. Like I said, constraints don't work well for me because it doesn't make the project as flexible, especially when I want to go ahead and, in this case, complete the project earlier than October the 27th. So what would happen if I got the task constraint to be removed? Well, go ahead and double click on it. Remember, it's October the 27th. Go to the Advanced tab. Instead of starting no earlier than the 24th, let's just say, hey, start as soon as possible, okay? So that means that when your predecessor here, it's a start-to-start relationship, this one's going to start at the same time as the predecessor. Predecessor starts, I think it was, well, I won't know until I click OK, and they both start at the same time now, so I can just go ahead and hover over one, the 15th, and its predecessor, the 15th. And look how it became all critical, because now I don't have any slack time where I said, okay, this task you can go ahead and start a bit later, so that means that these tasks can become slackers, because hey, we don't have to, worry about finishing on time because we're not going to be the ones responsible for pushing out the project's finish date, just those that are critical. Now it's all critical, okay? So in any case, instead of October the 27th, wow, we finished a week earlier, okay? Cool. Let me come up here, click on the Format tab, and you don't have to look at anything slacking or critical, because now we know that everything's critical. We can't delay anymore. Another way to shorten your project's finish date is that by looking at any one of these tasks, could you take it and divide it into two and be able to have it between the two tasks start-to-start relationships? Like I'm looking at write content here. It's about 10 days, and I've got writer 1 and writer 2. Could I divide it into two and say, okay, writer 1, you work on this part of the write content, and then writer 2, that part? Let's see if this makes sense. I've got a total of 10 lessons that need to be written. Let's say that writer 1 can write lessons 1 through 5. That would be one task, and then writer 2, lessons 6 through 10. So I could go ahead and split this into two, and to do that, let me go ahead and come down here and select Add Images, hit the Insert key on the keyboard, so I can have the second field to type in the second task. So this one's going to be write lessons 1 through 5, so let me go ahead and type in write, and then hit enter, and then this one's going to be hit enter, okay? Now since I added a new task, it's in automatically scheduled task mode. It schedules it, but it's not linked to the other task. We don't have a relationship set up yet, and it's got 1 day question mark. Says, okay, hey, here's your starting day. Well, between the two tasks, it's going to take about 10 days. So let's go ahead and now that we have the two tasks, I can say, let me go ahead and move that down to 5. And then move this one up to 5. I'm not done yet. Let me go ahead and hit enter on that. So what we need to do is go ahead and, well, we need to unassign writer 2 to this task. And to do that, I love to come up here and go to the View tab and go to the Split View group and bring up the task form. When it comes to working with my resources on a task, let me go ahead and scroll down here. Let's make sure that I've got the right one selected here. It's this one. Let's go ahead and remove writer 2, select it, hit the delete key, and click OK. Now because it's effort driven, where it took 2 resources to do it in 5 days, when you remove a resource, now it's up to 10. Let's go back to 5. That's okay. Just go ahead and update that back to 5. Click OK. All right. Then we go to the next task, which we don't have a resource assigned, and we don't have a relationship between this task and the next one. So what I could do is come down here, let's assign the writer 2, click OK, and then to create the relationship, you can come over here and click predecessor and say it's going to be this one, write lessons 1 through 5. There it is, select it, and then click OK, and it goes to the default relationship type, finish to start. But we want to change that because we can work on both of these at the same time. In other words, this task, its predecessor, doesn't have to finish before this one can start. This one just has to start before this one can start. In other words, we're saying, hey, start them both at the same time. Let me click in here, click on the drop down arrow and do a start to start. And click okie dokie. There we go. Cool. So they both start at the same time, a total of 10 days to complete both tasks, as when we just had one it took 10 days. But the difference now is that, notice that as far as the duration of the project's going, instead of going out to here 10 days for one task, it's now down to 5. They're both starting at the same time, so we shortened our project's finish date from the 19th. Let me go ahead and scroll down to the 12th. Wow. Setting a baseline is your original project's plan, and it's used to compare against or track changes made when the project has begun. It includes tasks, resources, assignments, and cost estimates. In other words, after you complete your project plan and before you actually begin entering in your actuals or starting the project, you can save a baseline or take a snapshot, as it were, to track specifically the task duration, start and finish dates, and the cost. So again, you can tell later on whether or not you've deviated from your baseline, and if so, by how much. So to go ahead and take a snapshot or to set the baseline, come up here, click on the Project tab, go to the Schedule group, click on Set Baseline, and of course once you set it, you can also clear it. Let's click Set. Now you have additional baselines you can set. Why would you want to do that? Well, if you just have the original plan set right here for your project, and you're doing an analysis when you completed the project, you're going from the original plan to the end and you're like, wow, how do we get to $50,000 over budget? And you want to be able to break that down. Maybe throughout the project you can go ahead and take additional snapshots and get a little bit more detail at what point you actually jumped up, or maybe it wasn't at a particular point but incrementally. Still, when you take all these many snapshots here or baselines, you set them, you can say at baseline 5 we increased by 2,000, then at this point in the project or halfway through baseline 6, wow, that's where we took off. Instead of going from the original plan all the way to when the project completes, you can break them up here. So to keep it simple, let's just go ahead and take a snapshot or set the baseline for the original project here, the plan, and just go ahead and click OK. Now, no dancing clown comes out and says, hey, look, you just saved me. Just know that it's been saved. How can you tell if it's been saved? Well, one way to find out or to see the baseline is to come up here and click on the Format tab, go to the Bar Styles group, and there you go, Baseline. Click on the drop-down arrow, and again, you can view as many as you saved at what point during the project, but this was at the beginning, or that's what I recommend. It was last saved on today's date. Of course, you can go ahead and save it again and overwrite this if you'd like, or clear it, and then at some point, save it when you're ready. So if I go ahead and select that, notice over here in the Gantt chart that you've got two bars now. You have your original blue, and then you have your gray baseline. So you can compare the blue against the gray and go, they're together. Those are, well, looks like they're together, as opposed to being off. For example, if I come over here and I say, okay, with interviewing subject matter experts, it now takes 2 days, and hit enter. It stays the same, the original plan, but everything's been pushed over by 1 day, so you can see how it slipped. Okay, you can hover over one of these and say, okay, the baseline, the original plan was for this task, the 17th, and now it's starting, let me click off and hover over the blue, on the 20th. Wow, that's a major slippage here, okay? So you get the idea where you can compare the original plan against what's happening as you go through your project here. In fact, when it comes to entering in actuals or marking that these tasks have been completed here, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can right-click and come over here in the mini formatting toolbar and mark it at 100%, or click on the drop-down arrow and choose, 75, 50, 25%. But if you want to go to something a little bit more detailed, like maybe 26%, then let me go ahead and click off here. Come up here, click on the View tab. Let's go to the Split View group and go to the details to bring up our task form down below. And we can say for Examine Software, you also get the percentage complete right here. We can type in 100%, hit enter. And you can see over in the indicator column in the entry table, got a check mark that says the task was completed on Tuesday, okay? And then we can go to the next one, either select that or let me go to Previous and click Next, and it brings us down. You can say that one's going to be 75, hit enter. We can go Next and say this one's 10%, hit enter. And notice over here in the Gantt chart, these black bars represent the percentage complete. So at a glance, you can say, wow, the black bar goes all the way across. That means it's completed. Over here it's about halfway, and you can see when you hover over it in the pop-up it's 75%, and well, gosh, if I can hover over that one, it would say 10%. For a brief second it did pop up. You can pause the video and go back and try to get it to the millionth of a second that it did pop up. In any case, there you go. Now, another way to go ahead and view the details or to compare your baseline against the project and your actuals, meaning that when you actually start completing the task here, you can come up here, click on the Project tab, go to the Properties group, click on Project Information, come down here, click on Statistics, and you have your current, your baseline, your actuals, and your variance. So you can see we're off by 1 day. In other words, the baseline was supposed to finish project on the 12th. That was our original plan, but because we added an extra day, well, we bumped it out, so we varied by a day. Okay. And then down below, you got your duration, work, and cost. Currently, we're at 31 days. The original plan was 30, and then you can see for the work and the cost there as well. And then actuals, when we start completing task, right now we have 5.77 days. How does that work? Well, let me click and drag the title bar for the window down. And as you recall, this one's completed. That one's 5 days. That one was 75%, and that was 10%. So it added the 5 days plus 75% of the next task being completed. It works out to be 5.77 days, okay? And then the remaining days that you have left, and then the percent completed for the duration, and then for the total man hours, we're at 18%. Okay, cool. Go ahead and close out. Now, if you want to go ahead and print off a report of this, a summary report that includes your baseline and your actuals, well, watch the next training video. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the task form here by hovering over the split bar there and double-clicking really fast. It disappears. And there are other ways that you can go ahead and view your baseline, not just in graphic view here, but if you come over and I right-click on the view bar and go to the task sheet view, notice how I've got my start and finish dates, and we can go ahead and compare those against our start baseline and our finish baseline. So if I want the start baseline next to the start column, I can, after it, right-click on the column there and go down to Insert Column. Let's see, base, type it in, line, and then you got a lot of baselines here, but we want the start date for the baseline, not baseline 1 start or baseline 2 start, but just the original baseline start. Select that. And then you can go ahead and compare your start dates to the baseline. And is there any changes here? Oh, there we go. Right here for the outline phase. The baseline says it was supposed to start on the 13th, so what subtask is the culprit? Well, it's right there. Create outline. It starts on the 14th instead of the 13th, and then it threw everything off. Oh, that was horrible. Okay. And you can see it says baseline. If you hover over to the right-hand side, you can see the pop-up. Well, you can hover over right on it. You can see the pop-up baseline start. You can click and drag it out, and then you can see the rest of the name for that column label, baseline start. And then to get rid of it, go ahead and right-click on it and say hide. Okay. You can do that to any table. If you want to add an additional field, it just made sense for me to do it in the task sheet view here when I wanted to compare my baseline start, original start dates to what I have going on now. Go ahead and right-click and go back to the Gantt. You've got the baseline here. If you want to go ahead and remove it, you don't want to see it, come up here on the Format tab and click on the baseline and uncheck it so you don't see it. And you can check it to see it again, and then to clear it, go back to the Project tab. Click on the Set Baseline to clear baseline, and it says you want to clear the baseline plan that was last saved here for the entire project. Go ahead and click Okie dokie, and it's gone. Okay, no more baseline. Well, let's go ahead and undo that because we'll need a baseline at least to compare against when we want to print out our project summary report, which is the next training video. Now, we learned how to generate a report in an earlier training video, but in this video, if you're looking for reports and you didn't see the earlier training video, I'm going to show you how you can do it here in a bit more detail. So before I do that, I want to emphasize, as I went over in an earlier training video, that if you don't know what view you're in, you can come over here and look in the view bar, and you can see its Gantt chart, and if you have a bunch of cells here, that's the table. You can see over there's the chart. If you want to know within that view what table you're looking at, then you can hover over the table header square there. You can see the table in the pop-up is entry, and then you can see also the views, the Gantt chart. If you want to go ahead and change that, like I want to do, give it a right click. You can see entries checked. Let's go ahead and go to cost. I want to do that because coming off the previous training video, learning how to set a baseline, so we have the original project's plan when it comes to, well, our costs, the duration, start and finish dates. Well, in this table, it actually has the costs, including the baseline costs that I can compare. And I can't see my entire table here, so I'm going to go ahead and hover over the split bar between the table and the chart and click and drag it so I can see more. There we go. And you can see when I hover over the column label there, it says baseline cost. And I can compare that. Let's see, the original plan was 10,300. Oops, I'm over. In any case, I can break it down here by going, okay, which one did it jump in? Was it the research phase? Yes. From 1,300 to about 1,800. Okay, within that phase, which subtask did it jump on? Well, the baseline 400 is the same for the total cost. The examined software, that didn't change, nor did search internal documentation, but here, when we added the second day, as you recall in the previous training video, so it took 2 days to complete, interview subject matter experts, the cost doubled, okay? Now to go ahead and go back to the default table to entry, you can just come up here and right click on the table header and go to entry, and we're back to where we started. Well, you can click and drag the split bar over and get it close to the duration, then double click really fast so it can snap to it, that column, when it's close enough. And then to go ahead and generate some reports, come up here, click on the project tab, go to the reports group, and there you go. Click on reports. And you got quite a few to choose from. There's the overview, the category, double click on that. We want an overview for the project or the project summary, double click on that. And then come over here in the preview window before you click print to see if this is what you want, and click on it to zoom in. And you can see there's our start date, and the baseline was the original start date here, and that hasn't changed. How about the duration? Oh, yep. Our original project plan, when we took a snapshot to set the baseline, was 30 days. Then we started entering in information or changing the duration and completing task. Now it's bumped up to 1 day, so the variance is 1 day. I mean, you can go ahead and go through this and compare and contrast against that. And when you're done, go ahead and print it. I'm going to go ahead and click on the File tab to go back, and then come over here, go to Reports, click on Reports again. And let's take a look at another report. How about assignments? Double click. And how about who does what when? Let's take a look at that. You also got overallocated resources. That's cool. But who does what when? Double click on that. And it says, okay, what are the dates that you want to take a look at this? Right now it's the project start date to its, looks like its finish date from project start to finish. And you can say, let's not do that far out. Let's go ahead and go to September the 15th, okay? And you can see it'll only print the time scale between the selected dates. If I go ahead and click on it to zoom in, let's zoom in. So before we print it off, we can see what we're looking at here. Who does what when? Well, writer 1 is going to do what? Well, there's the task he's assigned to. And when is he going to do it? On August the 31st, he'll be examining the software. Keep scrolling over. Then he's got a break here, and then he's going to be finishing up on that task on the 7th, and then start on the next task on the 8th. And of course, when I print it off, I'll be able to see that, not have to scroll back and forth to go, oh, that's search internal documentation. Cool. And just go ahead and click print when you're done. Click on the File tab, and we're back to our project. If you have a coworker who does not have Project installed on his computer, but he creates a list of tasks for you in the Excel program, you can import that Excel file here into Project. You can see I've got no task, and before I import the task from that Excel file, let's go ahead and open it up to see what it looks like, to see what we're importing by coming up here and minimizing this down to the taskbar, because on my desktop in my exercises folder is my Excel file. The Spiffy task list contains all the tasks for us to go ahead and create a Spiffy software training manual, because everything we do here at Dreamforce is Spiffy. So let's go ahead and open it up. And there you go. Now when it comes to creating this, you want to make sure that you have an ID field. You can see up here in the row header, we've got the labels for each one of these fields, because when you import this in the project, it wants to know which task is going to be the first, second, third, fourth, and so on. So we've got an ID field, and then we have the task name. It just says name. Now you can call it whatever you want. You can call it stuff. It just doesn't make it any easier for Project to automatically detect that this field needs to go to, in Project, the task name field. If it can't detect it, then we have to do what's called mapping. We have to say, well, we want to be able to connect that field, or when we import it, so it dumps all that data in the name field into the task name field here, okay? Let's go ahead and go back to the Excel file here. So I've got the ID, the name, and then the notes. Now, I left all these other fields blank to let you know that, or to show you, that when you import this, project isn't going to prevent you because you haven't finished filling in everything here. It'll allow you to go ahead and import those fields that you do have something in, okay? How many sheets do I have? 1, 2, 3. The data is on sheet 1, not sheet 2, not sheet 3. It's on sheet 1, okay? Keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and close out. Then to go ahead and import that task list from that Excel file, come up here, click on the File tab, go down to Open, and then over in the navigation pane, I could go to my desktop and then come over here in the main view because on my desktop is my exercises folder, double click, and there we go. Now by default, it's only going to show me the project files. I want to be able to see, click on the drop down arrow, Excel files, database files, or how about all files? There you go. There's a database, a project file, and there's my Excel file. Spiffy task. Double click. Opens up the import wizard where it's going to ask us a bunch of questions where we give it answers. Based upon those answers, it's going to import those things that we want imported. Okay. Click Next. Now, to make sure that those fields that we have in Excel dump the data in the correct fields over in Project, we need to link them up, hook them up, or map them. We're going to create a new map, and then if we want to, we can save it and then use it later on by selecting Use Existing Maps. We don't have to reconnect those fields. But for the purpose of this training video, or the sake thereof, let's go ahead and say New Map and click Next and keep it simple. And then it says, how do you want to import this as a new project? We already have project open, so how about if we just append it, the data to the active project, or if we had a project that already had data in it, we can merge it. Let's just go ahead and append and click Next. And then what type of data do you want to import? Well, it's task. And then for the Excel options, you want to make sure that you include the headers, because if you don't, well, that's going to be tough to be able to say, okay, this field in the Excel file that says name is supposed to go ahead and automatically match up if project can figure it out to the task name field over here in project. So it's important that you have those headers included, and click Next. And then it says, okay, where's the data in the Excel workbook? Right now it's selected none, so we click on the drop down arrow, and as you recall, we had 3 sheets and they were named sheet 1, 2, and 3. If I select sheet 2, there's nothing, but if I go back to sheet 1, this is pretty cool because automatically you can see that from Excel, the fields that it saw in Excel, it was able to go ahead and find the fields in project and automatically say that the name is going to go to the name field. Now, even though it says task name, if you hover over this right here, it'll say task name in parentheses name. So it's still able to go ahead and say, okay, it doesn't say task name here, but it is the task name project field. And then duration goes to duration. You can go ahead and scroll down and see everything's been mapped. But the problem is that I've got nothing in the duration field, nothing in the start field, so it's not applicable. And then you can see, this is the preview, nothing in the deadline, nothing in resource names. So the only fields that I've got something is notes. I can scroll back in the preview and you can see the ID and the name fields. Now, since I don't have anything in those fields, what I can do is I can come up here and scroll up. We've got the ID, we've got the name, we don't have the duration. You can go ahead and select it and click on Delete Row, or just hit the Delete key on the keyboard. We've got Start, Delete, Deadline, Delete, Resource Names, Delete, so we just have those fields, ID, name, and notes. Good enough for me. Click Next. And then do you want to go ahead and save the map? So after we import this, let's say that Bob comes back to us and says, hey, I've got like 20 more tasks. I'm like, oh, brother, I have to go back through this again and go back and go ahead and add more fields. And oh, see, there you go. Because I went back, it automatically added those fields again. Now I have to come back and go, oh, well, you see, I don't want the duration. Delete, start, delete, delete, delete. I can go ahead and save this. And when I import it again, everything's set up. I can just pull that in and not have to go through all this and remap and select the sheet 1 and so on. So click Next. I'll go ahead and show you how you can save it in the next training video. Let's keep it simple here and click Finish, and that's it. All we imported was the task, and it knew that Start Project from the ID field is supposed to be the first task, second, third, and then we got their notes. Hover over it. Client wants us to start on time. Bob might be our man to write for us. He's the man. And in any case, there's your task, and cool. And of course, it's in auto task mode. That's the way I set my project up here instead of manual mode. Okay. And as you recall, it's going to schedule it from the project start date or today's date. Since I haven't set the project start date, it's going to have it on today's date. And then you can go ahead and set that up when the start date actually is going to be, maybe next year or next week. As you recall in the previous training video, we learned how to import data from an Excel database file, more specifically the task into the task name field here, and it was done cleanly. In other words, we didn't have to say, no wait, don't put it in the start field, don't put it in the duration, but Project knew how to go ahead and link the two fields up because, well, the names, where it says name in the Excel file, is going to be the name in the task name field here. You can see in parentheses it says name. In any case, if you run into a problem where you're trying to import data from an Excel file or an Access database file and it doesn't match up the fields, like maybe you named it something that Project can't tell if you mean the start date, the duration, task name, you can do what's called mapping. And I know I covered it briefly in the previous training video, but the definition of a map is a set of instructions that traces type as well as the location of data to be imported or exported, which we'll cover in the next training video. But again, the type and the location. So is the type of data in the task name field going to be numbers? No, it's going to be text. If it was in the duration, it wouldn't be text, it would be numbers, right? Or a date, more specifically. In any case, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and import, not from Excel again, let's shake it up. Let's do it from an Access database, and I want to import resources from that database. Well, let me show you the resources by going to the database, but before I do that, let's go over here and right-click on the view bar, go down to the resource sheet so you can see that I've got no resources here. Okay, let's go ahead and minimize this down to the taskbar, because on my desktop in my exercises folder, there's my resource teams database. Double-click to open it up, it opens up Access, the latest version that I have, which is Access 2010, but up in the title bar you can see that the database was created in an earlier version, in Access 2002 or 2003 file format. Now before I get off on this, let me show you what I got in here. I've got two tables. I've got Resource Team 1. You can see all the ones there for Team 1. And then double click on 2. You can see we've got all the 2s for Resource Team 2. We're going to import Resource Team 1. Now back to the file formats here. You can see this was created in an earlier version of Access, and you need to know that Project 2010 only imports from those earlier versions. It doesn't import from 2007 or Access 2010 because it doesn't support those latest formats. So what you need to do is that if you have an Access database that's in the latest format, 2007 or 2010, you need to come over here and click on the File tab, go down to Save and Publish, and then come over here and say, hey, it's got to be an earlier version, 2002, 2003, or 2000. And then go ahead and click Save As, and once you save it in the earlier version, then you're almost good to go, okay? In any case, let me go ahead and close out and come back down here and restore project. I say almost because when you put it into an earlier version, Project does a funny thing. It goes, we don't like what are known as legacy or non-default file formats. Legacy meaning an older format. And again, Access 2003 is an older format and not the latest, 2010. And also, it's not a default file format because the default that Project could be looking at is, again, that 2010 version. So what we have to do in Project is we have to say, look, please go ahead and accept those earlier versions because you don't accept the latest version. So come up here, I know it makes sense, click on the File tab, go down to Options, come over here and select the Trust Center category, then come over here and click on Trust Center Settings and select Legacy Formats. You can see it says, hey, don't open anything earlier or these old files or non-default file formats. So we have to say go ahead and allow those earlier versions or non-default file formats and say okie dokie and okie dokie. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and import, finally, the earlier version of the Access database of those resources into my resource sheet here. So to import, come up here, click on the File tab, go down to Open, and then it takes me right to my Exercises folder on my desktop. You can see it there, Exercises folder on the desktop. And by default, it only shows me the project files. We have to change that and say, let's look at all files because, there we go, my resource team. And notice that the extension of it, .mdb, that's for earlier Access database formats. If it was the recent file format, it would have the extension .accdb. Now, if you don't know anything about extensions, you can watch my Windows training videos, but basically, in short, extensions lets the operating system know what program to open this file up in. And .mpp is for project, and .xlsx is for Excel. The X for Excel, M for project. Well, the DB is for the database for Access, so let's go ahead and double-click to open that up. It begins the import wizard where it's going to ask us a bunch of questions. We give it answers. Based upon the answers, it'll import what we asked it to. So let's go ahead and click Next. And it says, okay, do you want to go ahead and create a new map or use an existing one? Well, we're going to create a new one, and then later on, if somebody updates that database where it contains those resources and adds more resources, we don't have to go back and create a new map saying, okay, this field in the database has got to match this resource name field in project. Once we set it up and save it as an existing map, again, we don't have to create it. We can use it and quickly go through this and not have to do the legwork again, as it were. So new map, click next. And how do you want to import this file? We don't want it as a new project. Let's just use the one that we have here and say append it and click next. And then what type of data do we want to import? Resources, click next. And then the table name in the database is going to be Resources Team 1. Now when I select it down below, you got the from field, the database. It can see project, that is, all the fields within my database. And then over here, we have all the project fields that it's trying to connect with that database field. I mean, if you got an ID field in the database, project has an ID field in project. So it goes, hey, we're connected. You can see down below in the preview window, the database ID, the project ID, and here's the preview. It's going to number it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Resource 1. Well, the resource name isn't pulling, so let's come back up here and look at it. It says it's not mapped. It's not connecting. It can't figure out what field in project is going to be good for your resource name field in the database. So we come over here, we click to select the not map, click on the corresponding drop down arrow, and you don't want to go to ours to find resource name. It's actually going to be, let me hit the escape key, click on it again, it's going to be the letter N for name. Once you select it, see if this makes sense, down below in the preview, the database here, you can see as you go across, has the resource name, just like it says here. And then for the name field in project, when we map it up, it's going to pull over what it finds over in the database, which is exactly what we want. I mean, those are the resources, right? Writer 1, editor 1, and so on. And look, by default, it knows that when we have a notes field in the database here, that it automatically maps it to the notes field in project. You can scroll down to see it. There it is. Yay! If it's not the notes field, then click on it and choose whatever appropriate field in project you want to be able to take the data and dump it into, but it's notes, so that works. Now for these other fields here, like first name, last name, I mean, if you don't have the fields, then don't map them. If you want to go ahead and create fields to map them to, as we learned in an earlier training video, try that. Otherwise, we can leave it as is, or if I don't want to have this showing up, I can go ahead and select that field and say delete the row. Select that one, delete the row. Just get rid of them. You don't even have to click on delete row. You can just hit the delete key on the keyboard and there you go. So you've got these three fields. You can see them down in the preview. Looks good to me. You can even select this and reorder it, saying the notes is going to come first, and move it up, move it down. I'm fine with it that way. Click next. And then we can go ahead and save the map. So later on, we don't have to go through and do all this checking and setting things up. We can just, when the database is updated with additional resources or different resources, and the coworker lets us know, we can quickly go ahead and use this and have those fields mapped. Let's go ahead and click Save. And I'm like, Spiffy Resources map. I can't remember what that was. Do I keep it? Well, you can click on Organizer and select Spiffy Resources map and delete it. Are you sure you want to get rid of it? Yeah. Then close out. And it's gone, and it leaves the name there, and then we can say, well, let's just go ahead and reuse the name, and we can leave it as is, Spiffy Resources map. Click Save. Click Finish. Hey, pretty sweet. So we've got the resources there with their corresponding notes. Good with small projects, 5-year experiences in business, ready anytime. We like that. And then, like I said, if there's a change where you need to go ahead and import the resources again because maybe Team 1 has extra resources to it, or maybe Writer 1's not available, they made changes, then come up here, click on the File tab and go to Open. And click on the drop-down arrow to All Files, and let's go ahead and re-import this resource teams. Double-click. Click Next, and instead of creating a new map, let's use the existing one and click Next. And what was the name of the map? Oh, it was something spiffy. Go ahead and select it, click Next. Now by default, it remembers what we selected, so we can go, yeah, we still want it to append, and yeah, we still want resources, and oh, what's this? Okay, it's got an issue here. Oh my goodness. Well, it says it's out of context. It cannot figure out the resource name. When I click on the drop-down arrow and I try to select it, it has a fit. So I'm like, oh, okay, have your fit. Well, what I can do is I can go ahead and try it again, and if it still doesn't like it, I can change the table and go to resource 2 if you have another table, and then go back to resource 1, in which case you're kind of starting over from scratch, but at least you can go ahead and click the resource name, and type in the letter N, and select name, and it pulls it in then. You may not have this trouble with your database, but with me, I've got it. So we can go ahead and leave everything else as is. I've got my ID, resource name, and notes. Click Next, click Finish. And then notice how it just added more to it, the same resources. So if you're going to import again, I would go ahead and clear these out here. Hit the delete key on the keyboard, and okay, there we go. Now we got the latest and greatest and the freshest updates for our resources. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.